WomanUp podcast speaks to and about women and non-binary artists, as well as academics, writers, activists, midwives, carers and more. Those challenging ideas and ideals, questioning assumptions and provoking social change. It's a podcast dedicated to creating a living archive of these people and this work that anyone can access. We find those trying to change current structures founded on bias. Those working intersectionally across gender, race, sexuality, disability, as well as having caring responsibilities. We have conversations about lived experiences, achievements and aspirations, as well as fantastic artwork. In 2023, for Series 5, we received a National Lottery Project grant from Arts Council England to take the podcast on tour. For this episode of the tour, we headed to Birmingham, to an amazing socially engaged arts organisation, Friction Arts. Enjoy the episode. One of the artists that we spoke to in Friction, Natalie Mason, speaks in the episode about a song she wrote during the time her newborn was in hospital. This song she's really kindly shared for us, so we're going to start the episode by hearing that. It's called Day Zero by Natalie Mason.
On the day you were born, when night had begun, they nested you into an unseen box. The endless series of moments till we sleep by your side. A string of fairy lights cross the void. We walk the long hallway 1,000 times to you. You're here but also in limbo. Your eyes close and the dreams dance underneath. I wonder what it is you're dreaming of. Mere months alive, swimming subconscious sensations in a monochrome hue. Oh, most wonderful you, afloat on a single UC. You can't come home just now, so we've brought the birds to you. Filling up with the warmth of your smile, my heart jangles in an empty cage. Ooh, the lovely shadows. There'll be sunnier days, babe.
Hello and welcome to the WomanUp podcast on tour. Amy Dignam, our producer, and myself, Susan Merrick, are here in Birmingham today. We're at Friction Arts in their incredible building, The Edge, sited just off Cheapside Road. The building's amazing. I was going to describe it, but I might ask Sandra to describe that in a bit. I'm here with Sandra Hall, who's one of the co-directors of Friction Arts. She runs it alongside Lee Griffiths. Friction Arts have made us feel incredibly welcome, showing us around, inviting us to their storytelling event that we had last night. And Albert from Friction is cooking us all a meal for this evening as well, which is amazing. Yeah, so we're feeling very, very welcome here. We're also joined in the room by two artists who are linked to Friction. Natalie Mason, who's a performer, composer, facilitator and researcher. Natalie is linked to Friction because she's been directing the multicultural music making project, MMM, that she created in partnership with Friction Arts. And we have here Savhanha Smallwin, a poet, writer and mum to two under two. So for 30 years, I'm reading this from the website, Sandra, Friction has produced an ambitious programme of creative work in partnership or collaboration with artists from all kinds of disciplines, currently including Birmingham's only free visual art club for young people, delivered by professional artists. Also, the groundbreaking multicultural music programme we've just mentioned in schools and community settings, the Culture Club for young people. A Word from the Wise, a programme celebrating the work of elders and older artists, currently through our home project, or their home project. Walking Over Coals, the artist development programme for emerging, emerged and submerging artists. I love that term. And an ever-evolving series of site-specific performances and interventions in a variety of settings. Sandra, what is Friction Arts to you and who is it for?
It's by people for people. It's driven by passion. I mean, you know, we spent a long time revisiting what our vision statement was because they always want you to, but actually we wanted to. And it's striving for a world where equality and creativity flourish. And really all roads lead to that. And I think what Friction does is a process that's really important. We always start from the same position as the people that we're working with or collaborating with, either in community or artists, which is we never know what we're going to do. So our process is who am I, who are we together, what do we want to do and why? And only then do we choose the art form fit for purpose. That means we start from the same place of equity with people. They have an extraordinary story and we can find a way to express that story creatively with them. So Friction's really by people for people.
Great, that's clear and clear. Natalie, I'd like to come to you.
Yeah.
So you're also doing an Arts and Humanities Research Council funded PhD at the University of Birmingham, and I got from the website that you, also from your bio, that you have work in this area but across massive different settings and communities. So in that, what brought you to Friction Arts?
Well, Friction, I think Friction I met about 10 years ago at a performance here at the Edge called Echoes, which was an installation about Digbeth. And the moment we, me and my partner, who now works with Friction as well, met Sandra and Lee, we sort of instantly clicked with their ethos and way of working. And that partly is to do with the broad range of settings I've been working in. I'd recently returned from working in South Africa for a number of years and was struggling to find practitioners, organisations here in England who I guess had a really sort of wide way of working across discipline, intergenerationally, across settings, a sort of broad vision for how you engage with community that I felt Friction had. Is a sort of broad way of describing it, but from that sort of initial meeting, conversations sort of developed. Then there was a South African project coming to Friction, so that was an ideal way for me and my partner to then connect with Sandra and Lee more closely, and I got to see their practice close up, and music sort of became woven into that, rather than it just being a South African sort of township, we instead created a space that reflected the sort of the diasporic African communities within Birmingham, which made a lot more sense to me. So it's working very responsively to the place that you're in, the people that you're with, which is the sort of practice I'd had in South Africa, being very engaged on the ground with the music of the people in the room. So it made a lot of sense to me, and from there we developed this framework for a music project. So that who are you, who am I, who are we together sort of ethos carried through into the MMM programme, which is all about working with children in Birmingham and families who have knowledge and sort of cultural connections all over the world, and bringing that into the room. So rather than coming in with a project and sort of being quite top down in the approach, which I was finding a lot of, as a freelancer, a lot of the work I was being asked to do felt a bit like that, and I was trying to ask questions about the music the children were interested in and finding ways to shoehorn it in. But with the MMM we could design that as the centre of the programme. So yes, that was the sort of ethos that started MMM, and the PhD research that you mentioned, beginning of your question, that's really emerged from several years of MMM. I started that in 2019, MMM began in 2015, so we're heading for a sort of decade of this practice now and partnership, which has been a real privilege to be asked to sort of partner with Friction in that way, because I could design this programme. But the PhD research has emerged out of the sort of extra questions that I wanted to ask about this way of working, and just to be able to spend more time in Birmingham community settings actually as a researcher, rather than just the facilitator director hat that I've worn with Friction. So I can say more about that, but I'll let you meet Savhanha as well.
So yeah, Savhanha, you had a career elsewhere, and then through redundancy you've actually kind of found a different path, and you've been working in television, working in production and research roles for current and potential TV shows, which is another exciting thing. But you've also been involved with Friction Arts as a support artist for Culture Club. So yeah, how did you get involved with Friction yourself?
So like you said, I was made redundant, and I didn't want to, well, they offered me another job in the company, but it just didn't fit with what I wanted to do, because I realised I was wasting too much time just earning money and not exactly enjoying I wasn't pursuing what I wanted to do in like my life. So my landlord, she was a TV editor, so she sent me a link for a TV course, so I got involved with that, and that got me into the TV route. And at the same time, my sister, she shared a post from Afroflux, so this guy called Juice. He was advertising for his friend a position on Culture Club, and that was a support artist role. So I applied for that thinking, okay, that looks really fun. So I went for it. And then I got a TV job and Culture Club at the same time. And I thought I can do both, I can juggle both. So I took on both. And I worked with an artist called Sandra Hall, and we did Culture Club together. And from meeting, I met Lee in the interview, and then I met Sandra afterwards. And from meeting everyone, it instantly clicked that this was where I wanted to be. So I was offered some more roles in television, and it just wasn't fitting right with what I wanted to do at the time. And then Culture Club was there was literally two routes, so I had to choose which one. And I decided that Culture Club and Friction was the way to go. And then through Friction, after Culture Club, I started the How Were You project, which was sort of recapping people's lives through quarantine and what they were going through, because it was such a unique moment in history. We were sort of making a chronicle of it through caricatures with an artist called Ben Jones, and I was sort of doing the interviews with him, with another lady called Mia. And through there, that's how I started working really with getting more integrated in projects, through another project called Stir as well. And yeah, so I've been with Friction for I think 3 years now, coming up to 3 years, and it's been really good, to be honest.
Amazing.
Yeah. So what was the end part of the question? I go off on a tangent.
No, you've covered that brilliantly.
Yeah.
Can I also say that you were also part of Walking Over Coals? Well, you did some artist mapping with us, didn't you?
Yes.
Which I'm really pleased you did. It was really, because that's part of our training programme is the life mapping, which I know Natalie's done as well. So if we do talk about, because I know you were talking earlier about artist training and what that looks like, and how people are often encouraged to behave a certain way to become an artist, you know, the kind of industry standard, and actually we start with the personal. And the fact that you also came on that, I think you've both been on that, I just realised, actually, it's fantastic.
Can you tell us a bit more about that, Sandra?
Yeah, so we started a company back in 2002 called, with a group of incredible artists and makers and thinkers called, oh my God, here I go. started a project called. My God, I've had a complete blank.
Think of the name later. It's fine.
So we became. I'm really shocked at that actually, because I spent years on that project. It was when there was a lot of money around for the shift from manufacturing in Birmingham into the creative industries, as the word became, because that word didn't exist when I was younger. And there was a lot of work around, so we created a 3-month programme called, it was a training programme where artists would come and work with us. We devised the mapping, where people literally map their lives, and then they do a future map. And in that future map, they build which is all about their dreams, not just their career. They build a future map because there's something about being able to see your life drawn and being able to make connections about the decisions you've made to become an artist that are incredibly valuable to artists. So we call it CPPPD, which is continuing personal praxis and then professional development, because the businessification of the arts in England in the UK is horrific, I think. So the idea was that we started with that, and then from the mapping we then worked with a cohort of artists. This is when I'm with a company I created called Creative Alliance, which we co-created with people. So it was Creative Alliance, and people would then devise a new piece of work, create a group show, market it, and make it together, building it. And we used to work at the Custard Factory and have and they would have to do the marketing and everything. So they really understood all aspects of what they had to do. We used to fast track that in 3 months. Wow. And those people are still active, and 70% of those people increased their turnover by 100% within, I think, 18 months to 2 years of training with us. So we then took that because we asked them and encouraged them we didn't ask them, we in a weird way gave permission, but that sounds quite avuncular, but you start with your practice, you are the work, your pearl is what, and then you learn how to income stream from that. Do not shift your practice to fit the market, because it will be fickle and it will let you down. So the idea was always about how do you maximise that. So for the artist that was doing stuff about being evicted from a space in East London back in the early 2000s, she started to look at archives and how she could change archives, and then how she could be working with other people in heritage, so that we could work out and support her to work out income streaming from that, where she didn't have to shift her practice from that. So that's essentially what we do with artists a lot. And we're now trying new programs with older, mature artists as well, where we give people a space to be in a residency and just mentor them through stretching some of what they could be doing. And we very much like to partner with artists, so it's not just come and do this, and this for this program or this theme, but ask them to be with us and then to craft what we're doing together. And it just makes for better work, I think.
It sounds incredible. Do you kind of tell people about what you're doing, so that you kind of share your format almost?
We're really bad at that, actually, I have to say. We're really good at telling other people's stories. I think that's always been a capacity issue for me, because if I've got any time, it'll either be fundraising or making a project happen. It won't be talking about what we just did. Yeah. And that's partly to do with being an old punk, because nobody shouts about their stuff, really. 85% of the working force is working class. Working class people don't shout about how great they are. Yeah. If they haven't been to uni, and you know what I mean? All of that kind of cultural, you could call it baggage as much as anything. But that, I don't come from a culture, I've never said anything we do is innovative. I don't use blue biro, and I would never use the word immersive. And definitely not liminal,
Good, because
because actually, So I think,
don't know what liminal means, actually.
No, it's space in between.
Okay. Oh yeah, that's
so for me, it's like, there's a reason we got the word spelling, is because we cast spells with language. And so I think we've all the artists that we work with have been encouraging us to do a frictionary for years, because we have certain phrases and ways of saying things. And I think, we're not trying to be, it's very easy to become a clique quite quickly. To be a club, you have to be open, and you have to be open to change. Some people could see us as a clique with a family of artists, but actually being mindful of that and making sure that we're also, I do one thing a month that makes me deeply uncomfortable, because if I don't, then all the people I'm asking in both community or within artists, context and making work, I'm asking people to really step out of their comfort zone, so I have to do that once a month for myself. So I think it's about how you attune and how you be mindful of stuff, it's really important.
Savhanha and Natalie, do you find that this approach has been really attractive to you in terms of friction and how they run things?
Yes, there are a couple of things actually. It's always nice hearing, someone that you work very closely with presenting or reframing what we do, what you do, for new people, for new audiences, because actually things were ringing bells as you were talking, Sandra, about just then at the end of what you were saying. I'm going to go blank now. This is mum brain in what you were just saying right at the end. Something that makes you deeply uncomfortable. Yes, about if you can't do it for yourself, how can you ask other people to sort of step outside of a comfort zone? And that rings really true with my practice, and it's something that I forget that we have in common, and why the partnership makes sense in that way, in that the work I do with children around making music, so I often share something of myself first, musically, before I ask any of the children or families to speak about the heritage or share a song or an instrument that they play, because I think that's equitable in terms of what you were talking about. So I'm half Latvian by heritage, so my mum is British-born Latvian, and I've, through this work, explored who I am in this context, in this way of working with children a lot, because that makes sense. So it's that, again, sort of being in the room with people, but also sharing yourself and putting yourself as part of the work, really being present makes a lot of sense to me. So it's very attractive, and I don't think that is all that common, actually, and I think within the PhD research I'm seeing that centering and discomfort, the way that's partnered together is really important, but not everyone is thinking like that yet, and I think it's a really innovative sort of approach to this practice. So yeah, that's attractive, but also just the opportunity to partner with any organisation is very unusual, I think. So I think that's also something just to be noted, that no one before or after really has offered that opportunity to say, we're going to create a project with you, not we've done this project in the office, now we'd like you to deliver it, which is more common, I think.
It's very trickle down, isn't it? They come up with this sort of like quite generic, often quite boring idea, and then you're expected to deliver it. And actually, it just makes sense to me that you work with artists that have got that IPR and that intelligence to, because your intelligence is beyond musical intelligence, it's emotional intelligence, it's spiritual intelligence, and if you work with people at that space, then you're going to make the most relevant project, and that's what we have to be part of. If it's not transcendent, I'm not interested.
And as you're talking, you're using, you're sort of gesturing down, and I think that we're working very laterally rather than top down in that way.
Yeah, so for me, the thing about friction is it's always grown with me. So I came to friction, and obviously I've always wrote poetry, but I've never taken it further. And so through the life mapping, it led to me to do my first publication in December last year, which was a few months after we'd finished life mapping.
Congratulations.
Thank you. And since then I've had a few more come out, and literally friction has grown with me as an artist and as a person, because I've had my kids at the same time that I've been in friction, and friction's always been really flexible with them, but because with my son I was able to bring him into work and have him with me, so that eased the whole childcare situation. And now having my second child, even now Sandra's still filming opportunities like this one, or Marcus will contact me with opportunities going invigilating at the library a few weeks ago for the Windrush anniversary. So it's the fact that they're always open to me, and me having children hasn't put a block on it. A lot of organisations think, once you've had a child, it's sort of well, they've got responsibilities now, so you can't get involved in them, or they won't invite you to do certain jobs. With friction, that's not a barrier, because the children are always welcome. And if there's a situation like today, I couldn't really bring my kids because my son's a bit older, he's a bit active. There's just, Sandra's always I'll cover the childcare for you, it's okay. Just make sure you come and we'll sort the rest after. So it's always really welcoming. There's always a chance to say yes, and there's never like, I don't always think, no, I can't do it because I've got kids, or no, I can't do it because of this. It's always like, yeah, and we'll figure out the rest afterwards. So
can I also say that we did a couple of workshops where you got to speak your poetry, and we'd never heard you speak your poetry, and it was incredibly profound and very beautiful, and I think that was an incredibly important part of knowing you, to hear the words, you know.
Haven't prepared anything at all, didn't ask you, but if you have anything with you, we'd love to hear it on the episode.
Yes. I've got a whole phone full. So
awesome. If you want to have a little dig and find something, that would be amazing. Natalie, you also have a little one.
I do, yeah. I was going to say my daughter's downstairs.
So we've seen evidence today. Yeah.
Yeah, and I know even with this podcast, you know, if she needs me, she'll be up here, and that's obviously with you guys, that makes a lot of sense in terms of the focus of what you're looking at, but absolutely in terms of that equity and the flexibility and attuning, I think is a really, really lovely word that Sandra used in terms of, I think, what connects us as artists to this organisation, and that we feel attuned to, and we can also be ourselves and bring our families into the space.
So that links to me, because I was going to ask, when you're talking about everything you're doing, all of you, in terms of how busy that always sounds, especially yourself, Sandra. Conversation that's come up quite a lot in the podcast episodes we've done is talking about self-care and burnout, and I know that within socially engaged practices, community work, burnout is quite high rate, especially when you talk about the top-down type projects where people are expected to deliver masses, on small budgets and short time frames without much care around it. How do you as an organisation think about that, and when you're looking at artists, whether it's because of care and responsibilities or anything else, how can artists come to you for that support?
Well, we were really aware, because we worked all the way through lockdown, and in fact MMM and our art club programme were pretty much the only after school programmes that I know, although I know MMM happened in school, that were happening online throughout lockdown in quite a profound way. We were knocking on doors of the school and going in with problems solved because the parents had contacted us, all stuff that was in the grey area of slightly illegal but actually really important to be happening. So we watched the children's mental health change, literally week by week, and we made sure that artists got as much training as they could during that time. We've also introduced regular supervision with all staff. Certainly that slipped because we've been away, but that's back on again. Also, when we did the life mapping recently, it was a partnership with Culture Central, because it was Commonwealth Games money, and we were really clear that we wanted a mental health practitioner in the room with us, because mapping, when we used to do it, as opposed to after lockdown, is completely different. And although it's not therapy, people go deep, and you can't always stop them going off a cliff. So we made sure that she's actually a trained trauma practitioner, Diane Malcolm. She's coming tonight, actually. She was amazing, and she's also helped us boundary what we can and can't do with artists. So we made a decision on the life mapping that people could have a debrief with her, but they wouldn't be getting counselling sessions, because we can't offer counselling, because that's a different offer.
Yeah.
So we're looking and exploring with her and another practitioner actually about what would it look like to have a wellbeing practitioner in Friction across everything we do, including art club, that could actually and this is new to us, and obviously I've got to find the right back of the sofa for that, which I will. But we need to look at what that's like, because we haven't always got it right. We won't always get it right, and we need that extra support for us, because I'm not trained in that. We will be getting more mental health training offline now that we can. We also talk to people about their neurodiversity and what has to be in place for that. I think the issues can sometimes come across artists not feeling like they've ever revealed that they've got certain conditions. So it's then really difficult for us to help them if there isn't. I don't even mean a diagnosis. It's just that if somebody doesn't tell us certain things, then we can't navigate that space. What we've also done when we've come across difficulties with artists or there's been a communication breakdown is try and find some tools, because we talk a lot about the triangle work, which is let's be doing something together over here so that we're not confronting here, or let's have a SWOT analysis, or let's introduce there's a particular training thing which is design-led thinking.
Sorry, I'm going to cough.
That's fine.
I've got from them. Okay. It's not normally me who does that in episode.
So to talk again about design-led thinking, so bringing in something like design-led thinking as a tool enables us to show an artist that they may think they're over here in a project and have tried to call us out about something, whereas in fact they're over here. And then we've also, because of the life mapping, we've also mapped with people and shown them, where did the idea come from, who came up with it, like with Sarah, absolutely that was a collaboration, and she could draw the fact that Lee came up with a name and that it had been based on ideas that we'd had about Akala's Saturday Club. And so you could actually look at all the thought lines, because if you can draw them together and agree them together, then you can describe what happened. That isn't about evaluation. It's about how did we arrive here together. Mm-hmm. So we try and find the right techniques of mapping that suit the people that we're working with. And I don't even mean that, because a lot of artists are neurodiverse. I'm pretty sure that I'm undiagnosed at ADHD. Having done a load of mapping, you're like, I do that, oh my God, I do that. So it's about trying to constantly refine those systems and attunement to try and find the right appropriate way to do that. What we've also got to find is a boundary that an artist is being employed to do a job, or not even a job, but a project with us that will evolve with them. So we'll even try and contract with a pilot phase, then review that before the next contract happens, so that we can redefine what that looks like and protects each other.
So there's a lot of transparency then.
Yeah, and particularly around money, because money, his name's on the flyer, where, and communications. If you don't get those right, you're destined to complete fallout. You really are. And I think, in my experience, a lot of companies aren't transparent about budgets, and we are. And we're also transparent about why that money goes to the building. The building's a massive, money hole. And we're really clear about that, because I think then we can get on with the project, which is, changing the world.
I think we will come back to the building, because you've got some exciting stuff about that. Savhanha, did you find a poem that you'd like to share?
I did. So this one's called Blue. And I wrote it after I had my daughter, because I did have a bit of postnatal depression with her. It was just a lot to adjust to with 2 children. So I'm searching for greener pastures, for a finish line without a start, for this world to make some sense, form some meaning, placate beings of the celestial, and superimpose those of the ordinary, contemporary lives. We think we're so great, but in death we all fall down. Faltering, failing, the differences in the details, and other becoming another to hold, to love, to protect, fulfilling the role of a mother who knows only love but fails to protect. I remember once looking at this world through rose-tinted glasses, the hopes and dreams that would one day materialise and shimmer under the spotlight. But maybe it was a mirage, the light's mere reflections, black mirrors and empty expectations. Or maybe I'm wrong and it's everything. There's just too many spotlights, so we're blinded by the light. It's motherhood take 2. It's feeling like I've failed before I've even started. Choices removed, a body that won't listen, alone even in company. It's truly the end of times, the best of times, the only time everyone's here for you without ever actually being there for you. And if this is life now, it must only get better. This world is a revolver, one bullet, the difference between living and disbelieving. So I run on spurts of adrenaline, impulsions of fear, decisions made in an instant and instantly regretted. We'll see this game through to the end, even if it finishes us off before we cross the line. But an end's an end, and when we meet again, we'll smile and rejoice under shining lights, an infinity of spotlights. The only utterance needed, a simple, well played.
Wow.
Thank you.
Just mop up my eyes. Oh. What got you into poetry?
I don't know, to be honest. I wanted to be a vet, so that's the honest truth. I wanted to be a vet until I was in year 8, year 9, and I was constantly thinking I'm going to be a vet. And so I'd be listening to music in science lessons, and then I'd be thinking of my life as this vet, and then the test would come and I'd be failing because I wouldn't know what to write. And I'd always remember in GCSE biology, my friend was like, what did you write for how do you like help cure heart disease? What is the cure for heart disease? And I put surgery, and she was like, heart surgery, and she was like, you serious? I was like, yeah. She goes, the answer was stents. So I was like, okay, this is the end to any science dream that I ever had in my life. But while I was failing at science, I was doing really well in English because I got into listening to Japanese rock music and the fan fiction side of that. And so I'd started to write, but I'd never complete my stories, essentially, because for some reason, the way I write, I always thought I was writing stories, but really I was writing poetry because that's how it reads. It's more lyrical than it is, I don't know, more like it's not a, sort of, doesn't follow a typical sense of a novel. So really since coming to fiction, I've shaped it as poetry more than I have as writing. I'd like to go back to writing one day. I've got stories that I want to finish. But I feel like a lot of my pieces they're just poetry because they stand alone, they don't need to finish, and there's nothing to go from there. A lot of it is personal experience more recently. In the past it never was, it's just like imagination and wishful thinking. But that one I wrote, like I said, I was struggling with 2 kids at the time, well, still am, but it's easier now because she's not as needy. And it was just really strange. Like, no one tells you the transition between 1 child and 2, especially because they're so close in age. Like, even though she wasn't planned, I don't regret like having a second one so close. I always wanted close children, but I just thought because I had a cesarean the first time, everything was not planned for my first, and then the same thing happened again with her. So it felt like there was no control, and I couldn't, like, my partner left after 2 weeks because paternity leave only lasts 2 weeks. So it was literally just me healing from a cesarean with my son who just started to walk, and a baby who, like, I was like, what am I doing? Like, this isn't normal. So that was me just trying to adjust. So there's 3 parts to the Blue series. There's 3 poems. And everyone talks about the blues after you have a baby. And I never felt it with my son. I don't know if it's because he was premature, and so for 3 weeks he was in hospital, so I never had that, like, I was able to adjust at home, recovering from a C-section, coming to visit him, coming home. I was never having to deal with a newborn, because I don't think Montana ever had a newborn stage, if I'm honest. He was just so good. Well, that's how I remember it. Maybe he wasn't so good, and it's just wishful, like, looking back at the past, you always make it seem better than it was. But this time, I don't know, this newborn phase has been like a train, like, it's like, whoa. And it was just trying to adjust to it. So I felt the poetry was the only outlet to talk, because a lot of people just don't quite understand. And in my friendship group, there's not a lot of mums, and not a lot of mums with that age group. And yeah, I think it was just a big thing. So I thought,
It can feel really lonely, can't it?
It's strange. It's the oddest feeling. But now it's a lot better. So reading back that, it's like, whoa, it's weird. But yeah,
I know Amy and I can definitely both connect with your words and your experiences on that.
Thank you.
Completely. And it does get so much better.
I was going to say, it's not like nicer now, because my son plays with her more. Like at the start, he would push her away, he had no interest. And now he keeps her entertained, so it's less of a burden for me to just leave her on the floor with him. So instead of her crying for me, she's playing with him, and you can just hear laughter. So it's like, right, we're good. She's got a babysitter, I'm okay.
Yeah, it makes a lot of sense to me too. And it's interesting that you've been writing poetry, because I've been writing songs about... So I'm mum to first child, who's just over 6 months old, and she was in the hospital for a month when she was born, not because she was premature, but because she had quite a rare condition, which she's now thankfully fully recovered from. But yeah, it was really interesting just seeing you get out your phone, because I've also been writing, similar, lyrics on my phone, and trying to sort of find ways to process what was a very difficult experience of being separated from her. And so it's interesting how you're, just to see, sorry, I'm sort of not interviewing Savhanha, but just it shows, even though we have seen each other, actually stopping to have this conversation is unusual.
Crossover.
It's the opportunity to actually speak about being an artist and a mother, with a fellow artist and mother, even within this organisation, it's still an unusual chance. So it's lovely to hear that. And
I know, I'm glad it's not me, the only one having to go to words to
yeah,
get
it's
it
really
down.
tricky to get it down. I mean, yeah, I've not normally written on my phone, but I've sort of just the practicality. Of in the middle
with
of the
kids,
night.
there's no pens, no more, no paper.
Yeah.
No pens, no paper.
And we have our phones accessible, don't we? So if they're napping on you or feeding or whatever, you
one
know,
hand.
Yeah.
Occasionally getting to the piano to play it, but
Nice.
yeah. So it's lovely to know you're out there creating in response to all of that as well.
Well, and this is important, isn't it? It's your networks, and it's not just about, as an artist, your networks, but when you've got like life-changing experiences, whether that be illness, whether that be, having children or caring responsibilities happen, or, moving location, that, those kinds of things. You need support, don't you? You need your communities, and, if we have that as artists, then we can tap into that for whatever we need, hopefully. Right, where do I want to go from there? Just have a look at my notes. So Savhanha, coming back to the fact that you've had this big change, having kids, you've got a new project that has kind of been born of this. Would you like to share that with us?
Yeah, so both having children and then being rejected so many times, because although I've been published, no one tells you how many times you get rejected behind the one publication. So I think I've got so far 8 poems out, but I've got over 80 that have been rejected. So everyone's like, oh, you got a lot out. It's like, no, believe me, it is hard getting a poem out and getting it accepted. And then again, with having my daughter and having my son at home, it's so hard to do anything creative in the times, because I'm tired. When they're tired, I usually just sleep. So I thought, no, I need to change routine. So I created a zine recently called Recesses, and the ethos behind that is sort of a place for work or creations that have been rejected, forgotten, or is experimental and new. So it's literally open to every single art form. So I kind of want to make a home for it. And obviously you can't put videos and music into a magazine, which is why there's going to be like a PDF version to download for phones, which is the written stuff, and then the online, which will have both the written and the musical and the video art stuff. And I started that just under a month. Well, I had a whole timeline planned, and then nothing went to plan until on the 20th. Well, it was meant to start on the 8th of June. I was like, okay, submissions open for a month, and then I close it on the 8th of July, and then it comes out on the 8th of August. And then that didn't happen. So I started it on the 23rd of June. I thought, right, I'd have to change the date now. And it's now closing it was closing on the 27th of July, which is now the 21st of July, because so many people I was overwhelmed by how many people have submitted stuff. Like at the start, there was no one. So my first day, my sister was like, you got anyone like submit anything? I was like, no. I was like, you better submit something. So all my sister was like, you're going to have to submit something, because this can't be a failure on the first issue. Maybe I'll do one issue, cut it off. But then after 2 days, people started to send stuff in, and since then it's like 5 people a day, and it's been so much. So I've literally shortened the submission date, but I'm still keeping the 8th of August as the release date, which is why, and the number 8 just means a lot to me for some reason. Like I'm drawn to the number, and so the date of publication is the 8th of the 8th, 2023. So I wanted to keep that as the debut. So I thought, I can't get this thing out between the 27th and the 8th, so I've had to shorten it to just this Friday being that's it. But it's looking really good, and I had to do something because I can't just sit at home and lose myself in motherhood, because it's so easy to just be consumed by your kids, and because everyone sees me now as a mom, like, oh, you got to put the kids first, you've got to do this. Like, and I don't have to do that. Like, I am their mother, but I'm also me as an artist. I'm still Savhanha. I still like to create things. So that's what I'm still going to do with them. Like, that was always the plan for me for motherhood, was to do things together. And it is hard. Like, I'm not saying it's easy, and I wouldn't encourage a lot of people to do it. But, like, I thought I have to do it for me, to know that I'm not losing myself in this, because I don't want to, when my kids are, like, older, I don't want to be at home thinking, wait, now it's time. Like, and look back at a missed opportunity. So I thought, no, right, just do it now, because I'm going to regret it. It's lost time. And I have, while they're still little, because they are close in age, there was gaps where they were asleep. So sort of me going to sleep with them, I'll work on this and I'll make an opportunity for the artists, because it's not currently there. And it's been really nice to see the responses from artists around the world, because it's not just the UK. I've had people submit from Indonesia, from America, and Australia, and a lot of them are older artists who are like, thank you for giving a platform for previously published work, because a lot of places only want new, and they don't accept simultaneous submissions, and I do, and I accept previously published. I accept it all, because I just feel like it's easy to get something out there and for it to be lost in the archives, and because the internet's so big, like, zines disappear too, because there's just not enough money that goes into these. A lot of things is voluntary, like this is voluntary for me. So just to give people a chance to bring stuff back and show it to a new audience, really, that's what Recesses is for. And hopefully it continues to grow and I continue to keep up with it. And that's my latest project, because I just
Where are people going to be able to find that? Because when this podcast comes out, you'll have gone past the August date. I think we'll be in the autumn. So
okay, so issue 1 should be out already. It will be online. I don't know the website, because I've not bought the domain yet. It's a Wix site, but fingers crossed I'll buy it soon. But I'll put the link with the podcast. We are on Instagram, _recesses, RECESSES, and on Instagram with the same name. And you can find us through those 2 outlets at the moment, because Twitter's been amazing. Believe it or not, if you're ever promoting a magazine or any business, Twitter's probably the way to go, even though it's a bit dodgy now with Elon Musk. That's a whole other conversation. But Instagram, a lot of it is you have to pay to get an audience to see you. So unless you don't know people, Instagram's not really the way to go, because it's more pay for a boost. And once they realise you're a business or a creator, you've got to start putting money into it. Whereas Twitter, there's no questions asked. If you get into your community, the community will share you and push you up, but Instagram's a bit more lonely, I'd say. Yeah. So yeah, for anyone interested in promotions, Twitter.
Well, also with my mentorettes, that's either a DYCP or a Arts Council application, because you piloted now. Sorry, I do have mentorettes, and I also
mentorettes.
That's what I call it. And I also absolutely adore Savhanha. So obviously, there needs to be a conversation after your first couple, because that's your pilot, and then that's what we go. Look, these are the stats. This is the comments from people. It's needed, and that's absolutely fundable.
Yeah. So on that subject, but also the vocabulary that you keep throwing in that I love. I do like that you need a frictionary. You threw in a term earlier. I don't know if you wanted people to notice or not, when you were talking about the Commonwealth funding that you'd received, and what did you call it? Steel Wealth funding?
Stolen Wealth Games. Yeah.
Stolen Wealth Games. Thank you.
I'm going to cough now. Sorry.
Okay.
That's fine. Yeah.
So I wanted to ask if you minded chatting about that a bit, because as an organisation who is reliant on funding, and we had a chat briefly earlier about the complexities of that and sometimes the problematics. That's an arty word, isn't it? The problems that come. But how do you navigate that?
I mean, it's very clear that the kind of shape of funding is based on a kind of very patronising, avuncular Victorian shape, which is, you go and work with people that we won't, and you go and mend them. I call it mending money as well. I'm very clear, we've always been successful. Well, we haven't always been successful with funding, but I understand that in order to speak to somebody in 2D on paper, you have to find out about them. So I always research who I'm working with. Some funders you can do that. Some funders, like the National Lottery, don't have a kind of discernible personality. It's quite a black hole, and there's just criteria of giving. So for me, my standard phrase is all money's dirty, some's filthy. And we'll be very, very kind of discerning about what we go for, unless we're going to flip it as well. Excuse me, I'm going to have to cough again. So, for instance, we've been very well supported by a certain fund that's from a water company. And I think if I'd been quite aware of just what they're doing to our rivers and seas, I think we may have had much deeper discussions with the whole team about taking that money. However, I wasn't aware at that point, because when we got it, with the Stolen Wealth Games, we've always been really transparent, because we know most of the people that, or they've worked with us, or they're aware of Friction because we've been around a while. And they did, when Martin Green came in as CEO of the Commonwealth Games, he very much built a team that was built on producers that were local, and they are the most successful Commonwealth team that brought culture to the table in quite an extraordinary way, actually. So because, Tim Hodgson and Louisa Davis and also Radine Carter were part of that team. They did a lot of thinking and a lot of discussion around the complexities of Empire and the Commonwealth Games and Birmingham and Birmingham's relationship to things. They haven't been perceived as successful by everybody, and it was fraught with issues, as all of these corporate things often are. However, it was coming, and we could either pretend it wasn't coming or find a way to ethically engage with it. So, they did ask us to do quite a large project, and the project that we proposed wasn't going to get funded, and we kind of knew that, although to be fair, they did try and make that happen. What we were prepared to do was work with all of the sites that were outside of the city centre. So the project that's up at the Library of Birmingham that Sav works on, which was How Were You? And also Back Home, was a response to the Commonwealth, because they said, you've got to do something about the Commonwealth. And I said, well, people don't understand it. But I said, if I ask about Back Home, you'll hit a Commonwealth country. I was born in Kenya. I'm a Brummie, but on my back home's Kenya and Chingford. And all of the pictures and all of the stories that are on QR codes in the library are from people talking about back home. And not all of them are a Commonwealth country, but that's the point. The point is the project is about Brummies and then about the back home. So we chose to interpret it that way. They were happy with it, so we got to do exactly what we wanted to do. Quite a lot of organisations had quite a fraught time with the constructs and the pressure of what had to be delivered for the Commonwealth brand. And we pretty much navigated that painlessly, I would say. I wouldn't say that was the same for everybody. We also chose not to have one of the big commissions. So that meant that immediately we weren't under that level of pressure to deliver things in a certain way for them. So we navigated it. We were never going to work with the central sites for all sorts of reasons, because we'd also been the only people to document the closure of the wholesale market, which then was flattened and became one of the sites. So it was too painful. I couldn't have gone back there. So I know these things come and they do benefit. I mean, who? I'm not sure. Change is about loss and gain. Who's gaining and who's losing. We've seen a massive surge of incoming, economic migrants coming to Birmingham, which is a whole different economic and social fabric to do with the city. Because since 1992, since Glasgow was the capital culture of '92, that's when they understood that culture could be part of regeneration in what's become an increasingly divisive way. So that's my complex answer to the Stolen Wealth Games.
But you also, so away from that and in a celebration of getting funding, you've received funding to completely refurb the building that we're in. Do you want to talk us through that? Because that's quite exciting.
It is. In
terms of where you are in the area and
you.
how well you know this area, part of Birmingham.
Well, it's interesting because we've moved every 5 or 7 years. We've moved further away from the centre of Digbeth because it's got cheaper, because that's what happens, isn't it? We're very lucky. Lee only found this place because there is a pub called The Anchor that we composed Ron Can Edit Sober in. And that is, he did a 1 mile square around that, because that's a place that's like a living room for us. Okay. Did a 1 mile square kind of circle and then walked and just found this place that said to let. So we moved in here in 2007, and we were very lucky that we could deal directly with the landlord. And we could often negotiate rent rent reductions and all sorts of stuff, and because it was a full repairing lease, it got complicated, but we got him to chip in on the roof when it leaked, and so we've always had a good relationship with him. And then we built a relationship with our bank, which is Unity Trust Bank, and this extraordinary, what I call a creative bureaucrat, called Lee Jagger, who recognised what we had here, recognised our social impact, and said, we need to help you buy this place. And that's unheard of, that an arts company can buy its own place. Gave us a 100% mortgage, which is also unheard of. Wow. I mean, there were lots of caveats with that that are complicated, but that he essentially helped us through to buy it, which is extraordinary. Then we've had bits of capital over time, so get the windows and stuff. And then Lee and I, during lockdown, because we're getting older, we've been looking at succession planning. And because the underpinning work is political, we said, what do we want to be doing in 100 years' time? And it's the building. And it needs to be secure for artists to make spectacular mistakes, to spend time with each other and not always be producers. And also community to really cross-fertilise and have a space. There's a lot of research done on the third space. So the first space is a home, and then the second place is work. And the third space was the place that you could just meet, like the Working Men's Club or the community centre, and they're being eroded and they're being monetised or they're being mediated. So you've got to buy coffee. You've got to buy 5 coffees in order to stay there. And actually people need an unmediated space where they're allowed to be welcomed, because that's where insurrection and change conversations happen. And that's really what the Edge needs to be as well. It needs to be a place where Albert's cooking, people are sitting, they're cross-referencing, they're coming up with ideas with or without us. So we've managed to secure a significant amount of money from the Arts Council and even more money from what's called the Youth Investment Fund, which comes from SIB, which is a contentious fund from the government that is basically dormant accounts money. And they recognised that knife crime was rising as fast as the decline of the youth centre. So it's a really huge programme that was set up to do a fast investment into youth spaces. They've supported us, and we're not a natural fit for them at all. So big shout out to Matthew Vokes for that support. And what we're doing is we're going to partner with youth organisations. They will then come in and work with young people that then have an opportunity to find out about MMM, to come and do poetry with you, the art club on a Saturday. They can pinball around the building. They can access, we've got the biggest games company in Digbeth. They can access all the kind of apprenticeships that are going on and stuff. But we are not a youth organisation, and we will still have artists. The artists will be the centre of the space. We'll be basically doubling the footprint and having access to the roof. You haven't seen the roof yet.
No, we need to do that.
So we will be putting a lift in. There'll be stairs, and we're looking at glass everywhere so that everybody can see across spaces, because I was terribly bullied as a child in stairwells in schools. So we're going to make sure the stairwell's glass so people can look across the spaces. And we've also had the children saying at the top we need a parapet that's glass so they can paint on them. So they've been part of the slide that they want from the roof to the floor might be difficult to do.
Shame.
I know. They wanted a sleeping and a nap pod, which meant they felt safe enough. If you feel safe enough to sleep somewhere, that's really something, So the space has already got a personality, and we don't want to strip that out. What we've also got is 2 extraordinary architects that have walked with us, and they want to bring us passive house technology, which means we'll be an almost zero carbon building. So we're really super fit for the future, and for that whole kind of eco, and not just waving a stick at it, but the whole building will be a retrofit. So it's exhausting but absolutely exhilarating at the same time, because, for instance, Natalie runs this incredible event called Club Integral, and one of our closest friends, Tracy, whose partner was a very well-known eccentric artist and musician locally, she's never been able to come upstairs. So I want her to be the first person that comes to the roof, and she will. She wants to bring She wants to bring her partner with her. She's got these fireworks and stuff. So for me, being able to make the building available, not just accessible, I think is different in terms of the importance of language. Yes, we'll do all the accessibility checks and we'll have a disabled, but it's making the philosophy available. And that the building will also do that. Underpinning that will be a whole load of work on our archive to show artists different routes to making really good socially engaged practice. You know, your PhD will be on there. You know, so that your poetry will be on that, so people can look back at who held the space, and that's also part of the future of the building as well.
Amazing. So I don't know if the mic's picked up on that, but I just heard some drumming, and from just before we came on, we know that drumming means that Natalie's child needs some extra entertaining, and I love that. It's just like, oh, I know what that means. So it brings me to thinking about the last question I want to ask all of you, and it's a question I've asked in most of our tour episodes. Didn't remember in the last one, I was really bad. But what does it mean to you to make art and be an artist in Birmingham? That's open to everybody.
Very good question. Make art and be an artist in Birmingham.
Yeah. Why? Yeah. What's interesting about doing it, or what's great, or what's awful about doing it in Birmingham?
I think it's a fantastic place to be an artist, and having lived elsewhere and returned here, I think I brought back an experience of working internationally to a city that is very international, but is also home. So I think the mixture of home and international working for me is encapsulated in Birmingham, and that you can, just being with the people of Birmingham, you can be sort of everywhere, if that makes sense, and also very rooted. It's somewhere that people feel very welcome. But just being with the children, I work with children and music, and the children of Birmingham are often connected in one room, are connected to every continent, speak multiple languages, know songs from all over the world. And I think there's something about a place where people feel welcome, but can absolutely be themselves, and all the nuances that brings. So being an artist and working in Birmingham means having the opportunity to, I guess, musically connect with all the sort of musics that I'm very passionate and interested in from all over the world, but doing it right here in one place. So I think it's unusual in Britain, in that it is so sort of comfortable for a lot of people to be in, and it's quite modest as well, as a sort of I think the punk analogy that Sandra was talking about. You sort of have to sometimes work hard to find what's going on in Birmingham, but I like that as well. It's not about sort of demonstrating or sort of displaying for to be seen. It's about the sort of culture of a place, and sort of really living your art, and it all sort of exists here in that way. So yeah, being an artist here is I feel like it's endlessly challenging and rewarding and eye-opening, and one PhD is not enough really to sort of to talk about and sing about all the sort of everything that's going on in this city. Vast array of musical happenings just every day. There's sort of, I've been spending time researching music making that happens just on a Saturday morning, and I've been hanging out with Latvian children, Slovakian children. I've been learning harmonium with children who have connections to Bangladesh, and it's all happening all at once in Birmingham. But it's not about doing it because somebody's asked you to sort of display your culture, or sort of, I don't know, tick box sort of cultural practice. It's very, very grassroots led, and it's possible in this city. I think longer term, Birmingham has got I think also could support what's happening here musically, and sort of that artistry that I've been really privileged to encounter and work alongside. I think there are more platforms to be found for all of that music making. But talking purely from a musical point of view, I think it's an incredibly fascinating and interesting and alive place. It's also a very young city, very, very diverse city. So I think all of that for me makes it an incredibly exciting place to be an artist. Somewhere I'm lucky to call home.
Thank you, Natalie.
So I've lived in Birmingham my whole life, never left, but I've lived in different parts, and it's so every part of Birmingham is so different, and I think the art scene sort of reflects this, and I've been really lucky to have Friction as my first, and it feels like my core sort of like artist home, because I know it's not easy to sort of get involved with other artists' organisations in Birmingham. A lot of it feels different, it's not as comfortable, it's not as easy to get involved. I've witnessed it through my sisters, because my sister's a fine artist, and she's struggled really hard to find her place in the art world. And I sometimes she's like, how did you get involved with Friction so easy? Because she'd heard of Friction, but she'd never known how to get involved. And I don't know, I saw an ad, I went for a job and I got it, and that was it for me. So I'm really fortunate to have found Friction that way and found it in Birmingham, because a lot of people leave. One of my sisters has left Birmingham to go to Bristol, and she does her graphics there because she hasn't found a place for it here. And one of my other sisters is looking to move to London, because obviously London's the hub, it's the main city, but at the same time there's so much competition there, and a lot of the things have been done in London, so it's like, what are you bringing new to the table? And a lot of it is about money and finance. So I'm lucky in a well, I think Birmingham artists are lucky in the way that it's not been about money, and nowadays it's about change, because Birmingham's a growing city, it's constantly changing, whether or not that's for the good or for the bad in some situations, because you have to talk about the gentrification of certain areas to make Birmingham look pretty, essentially, and make it look like London, so it's more attractive for finances and stuff. So I suppose as an upcoming artist, I'm really lucky to be in Birmingham at this time where change is happening. So there's so much more opportunities in the way that art's being sort of interacting with the economical decisions, like the Commonwealth, how that interacted with art. And I was lucky to be part of Friction, so I was on the right side of that and not in the side that was using like people's artist heritage to avoid, to make a bridge over certain difficult conversations that surround things like the Commonwealth, as Sandra's discussed. So it's a strange thing, because although Birmingham's a great place and there's a lot of things changing, sometimes as an artist you have to make the decision whether you're on the right side of those decisions and whether you're doing it for the right reason. You have to stick to your own reasons, I think. And I think a lot of the artists that I've met have stuck to their guns and been like, right, this is why I'm doing it. I'm not going to give in to the temptations of... I don't know if this makes any sense what I'm saying, but I'm not going to give in just because it's a money thing or to get my name for publicity, because a lot of people want to sell out to get their name out there, to avoid the harder route of getting your name out through maybe smaller means. And I think Birmingham, it's just changing, and like I said, it's hard because I liked old Birmingham, I liked Digbeth as it was, I liked the markets as it was, I liked Old Town. I don't like how it's all apartments now, there's no shopping centre, the Bullring's all closing down, and what are we left with apart from seeing people move into Airbnbs? That's not a city. So we're not becoming a city, we're becoming just a hub, a Passover city for HS2, a way to get to London, to Manchester. And I don't want art to be like a billboard on the way. I feel like art should be the core, and I feel like a lot of businesses are using it as to bring people in, and then there's an emptiness to that. It's just there's nothing behind it. I spoke to another artist, Anatomics, who was here for the Culture Creative Central for life mapping, and she said the same thing, how her art was used by the HS2 people, and she was never consulted for her art to be used as advertising, and a lot of other graffiti artists were the same, and it took a whole legal battle for them to take her art down or to give her compensation, and they would rather take the art down and give her compensation for it. So again, it's a question of, is Birmingham it's not what it was, or is people just using art to make a pretense of, we're home, you can do whatever you want, but what's the cost of that? Obviously will you be used just for your face and for what you can provide, but not be compensated for that effort? So it's Birmingham's a great city, but like every other city, it's changing, and I don't know if it's for the better. I hope it is. And there's still a lot of artists out there like Vanny Burke who are documenting like parts of the city that have such bad reputations, like Handsworth and Soho Road. And yeah, it's strange. Sorry, it's not an answer, but
it's a response.
It's a great response.
Yeah, and it's interesting because, you know, I was born in Kenya, I moved to Chingford, which was real big, violent culture shock. And then
can we just wait 2 seconds?
Yeah, let's do that. I just think if she needs to come down and join us, she's really welcome, but if she's not well, you know, she can also come down and stuff, because I think Juliana, is she up there?
Amy, we're just having 1 second. I mean, we're nearly done anyway.
No, she's all right.
Is she okay? She's
I was just
really
pausing
welcome.
because it was noisy you going up the stairs as well. So.
Yeah.
You're welcome to come and listen, Juliana. We almost done though.
I was just thinking of packing up.
No, don't worry, it's all good. Just wanted to make you aware we were doing it.
Yeah, we're just recording. We're not recording for much longer,
No,
because I've done way too much talking, I think, anyway.
Yes, so Sandra, do you want to
Yeah,
just respond to that?
the response, so the question was being an artist in Birmingham.
Yeah, or from your perspective, being an arts organisation in Birmingham.
I mean, we're artists. I hasten to add, we're artist-led. You know, because I do try, in between the funding applications, I do try and squeeze in this, make sure that I'm making work as well, particularly work when we go abroad. I think, as I started to say, that I was born in Kenya, moved to Chingford, and then came to college in Stratford-on-Avon to do my A-levels, theatre studies, and I was doing a lot of theatre then and a lot of television and film and performance and stuff. And then I got a job in Birmingham in 1990, confronting offending behaviour using drama in prisons with Geese Theatre Company. And I fell in love with Lee, and I also fell in love with the city because nobody came here to be famous. You know, it was regarded as that hole off the motorway. And, you know, as we know, the architecture aims low and misses. But actually, the people here, you know where you are with them. And you can be a Brummie within about 6 months to a year and have a back home. And that is so unusual for UK. You know, you can be welcomed in other cities, but you're kind of reminded you're not from there. There's just something about the West Midlands. It's also beautiful. It's a really green city, even though it's also got, you know, and there's something about the humour here, and the fact that you could go and speak to someone in a warehouse and get 2 tons of steel after 5 pints, and you can make things happen, and you still can, actually, in a way that I did when I was living in London and squatting and putting all sorts of co-ops together and all sorts of stuff. That one time in the 90s, in the 80s, when London, nobody really wanted to be there. So having seen that coming down the motorway, I was really glad to move to a city that wasn't quite there yet. With the change. The change is coming fast, but it's quite a particular change as well. So I'm absolutely kind of echoing what you said. I love making work here because the audiences really respond well. Communities that we've been, you know, really honoured to work with, from allotment owners to bingo callers to, you know, the most extraordinary, you know, kind of communities of people, mean that we can continue to make extraordinary work in partnership with them. And it's because the fences are lower, the defences are lower, and the kind of connections with each other across all sorts of boundaries are much easier to traverse. And that's what friction does. It's about boundary crossing philosophically, physically and practically. And if we can get people to border cross, then we can change the world. And you can really do that in Birmingham, you know, it's very, very special.
Yeah. Just to add, sorry, I feel like the art in Birmingham, for echoing you, Sandra, it's moving out of the centre. I think the place where art needs to go, is being found, is the places outside of Birmingham. So it's places like Lozells, Neatshaws, Handsworth. It's the more working class, more deprived areas that are slowly being gentrified and being claimed, but they can't quite be claimed. If that makes sense, because the community is so strong that they won't let that happen. And I think that's where the art is moving. So I think in the main city, art's a decoy, but Birmingham is still home to these things. You just have to move out of the centre to find it. And I think through organisations like Friction, who focus outside of the city, that's where you'll find like the what Birmingham is and was, like the true heart of the city is now not in the centre, it's moving away, because the centre's just changed completely, in my opinion anyway.
Amazing. Sandra's cheering away here silently. Let's not do it silently. Let's do it.
We've always said, because we've always said the markets was the beating heart of the city, and then you just absolutely nailed it. Thank you.
You put it into words, I was just like, oh, that's my...
I want to add that we haven't covered it, but there's a lot of international connection that you have as well, Sandra, with Friction Arts. So there's loads to explore about Friction Arts, and I suggest anybody listening check you out, check out what you've been doing, all your projects, check out the websites, check out the artists Savhanha and Natalie. We'll have details in the podcast notes. We're going to enjoy a really yummy dinner that's been cooked for us with a lovely, lovely group of artists and people who work here at Friction this evening, and we may even record some of that and see if it feels good as part of the episode. So thank you everybody, thanks for having us.
Thank you very much. Big round of
you.
applause for Amy and Susan, please.
We had loads of wonderful conversations over dinner, but the point wasn't really for us to be recording them. It was for each of us to be sharing in each other's time and company as artists, and especially as women artists. Interestingly, the bit I've chosen to share on this edit is Albert, who's been a large part of Friction Arts for a long time. It's him sharing what he cooked for us, what he shared, which Sandra had asked him to do, so that we had some food that was part of Friction Arts that could bring a group of people together.
I made some roasted cabbage.
Yeah, so here's just a brief description from Albert telling us about what he cooked for us this evening.
The lentils I made with tomato and basil, and the taste also reminds me of a dish in South Africa, something that we call midwives. It's got a similar spicy type taste, and yet there's only basil in there.
But it still has a
It
spiciness.
still has, the flavor is almost the same. And then I made it with panna gratta, which is Italian breadcrumbs. You with I hope it tastes okay. I hope it tastes okay, but I made it with a different, instead of just making the breadcrumbs, I added some garlic and chili and olives, just to give it a bit of pizzazz.
Are you pizzazzing?
And that's it, enjoy. And then I made some fruit salad and shortbread. But the shortbread was a disaster. I had to make some more.
This is such a privilege.
Is there any chance I could get some shortbread before you?
Absolutely.
Yes.
You are up in my own
You've been listening to the WomanUp podcast. To find more of our episodes, subscribe via any of the usual podcasting platforms, including Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Amazon, and more. For captioned episodes, please visit the WomanUp YouTube channel. And for news and updates, follow us on Instagram at woman.up.podcast.